some of the older building stock in Berkeley to something newer that would be of interest to our young aspiring entrepreneurs that are coming out of Lawrence Berkeley National Lab or on the campus. I think there's ripe opportunity right now for that.
Non, could you provide some insights from the market, the investment perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from a student housing perspective with the sentiment. I mean, we're in the middle of raising capital right now, institutional capital, as we continue to grow our platform. And just in the last 6 months, have gone out to probably a few hundred capital partners, institutional capital partners nationally. And it's still very hard, I would say. And yet at the same time, relative to a few years ago, it's gotten better. And yesterday, one of these groups flew in from out of the city and spent 8 hours with them, taking them all around Berkeley to showcase not just the student housing part of it, but what else is creating a robust city, so they can get behind sort of partnering with us for a programmatic type of structure. And I think what we're seeing is a shift a little bit from this very pessimistic or skeptical sort of lens where there's so much supply that's really hit the market in the last few years, to now seeing that there's been some positive metrics and some tailwinds with concessions going away, with effective net rents coming up, or leasing velocity. And those are things that I think we're trying to highlight so that we can show them that there's a brighter future there's a brighter future for Berkeley. And I think we're also seeing the supply going down, tapering off. 4 projects from private developers are being delivered this year. Next year, it's only going to be 1. And I think that's good so that the absorption can really take form here in this market. And so I think the other macro trend that's putting headlines, because institutional capital love headlines, is what's happening in San Francisco. And the AI boom and that AI wealth spilling over to other cities like Berkeley. And I think personally we're going to be looking at a couple of IPOs that's going to bring tremendous wealth, that's going to have secondary, third, triple, like just these downstream effects that's going to be reinvested back into Berkeley, into cities around us. And that's really, I think, part of the narrative as one piece of it to attracting capital. So knock on wood, in the next 30 days, hopefully one of these 3 or few partners that we're speaking to will actually come to the table.
Alan, did you want to speak about the Mandela project, what you're working on at Ashby as it relates to the question?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we're building the transit-oriented development at the West Oakland BART station, Mandela Station. It's a mixed-use development, 300,000 square feet of commercial office, about 760 entitled residential units. The first phase is an affordable, 240 unit affordable project that's getting underway first. West Oakland is a challenging place. Obviously, we hear all the stories about crime and other issues, and it's challenging. It's a really tough place. What we're hoping to do is just take advantage of this transit orientation and the proximity to that transit orientation provides to Ashby BART station, as well as downtown Oakland, downtown San Francisco, and use that to kind of overcome some of the challenges that we have attracting capital. And a lot of investors show up, a lot of major tenants show up, and everything on this, theoretically should just be really, really, investable. You have BART, you're 7 minutes away from where the AI community is growing, and they're investing billions of dollars. You're connected. I call BART the spinal column and the central nervous system of the Bay Area. It's got not only power, transit, but it also has a fiber optic network that runs throughout its 130-mile right-of-way. So we look at how do you leverage that, to really not only make it compelling to those investors and to those major tenants that would be looking at it, but also do it in a way that addresses the inequality, the severe inequality that exists right there. And I think this is that great experiment time right now where we can take advantage of these factors and lessons learned, things we did right and things we did wrong to get that together. So that's how we're approaching the Ashby Station.
Thank you for that. Maybe we'll move to the next question, and I'll start with you, Patrick. Hopefully you got your watch under control over there.
Yeah, I'm sorted out.
All right.
I'm sorted out.
How are investors underwriting Berkeley differently than they were a few years ago? I know you feel it's gotten better, Patrick, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. A couple of years ago, Berkeley was experiencing what I call a nuclear winter with respect to investment. The COVID and the big drop in rents in 2024 spooked everyone. But I think now Berkeley, people are looking at Berkeley afresh, and I think they're viewing Berkeley as an extremely promising market. And I try to tell them that I think we're entering a golden age. I started development in Berkeley in the early 90s, and I was predicting the revival of downtown then. I happen to be off by a century, but it's actually coming to pass now, and I think the prospects of having a mayor that's young, dynamic, progressive, pro-development, and a city council that is also pro-development is a hugely promising aspect of the city. When I started in 1990, developers were very much an endangered species, and most of the council was hoping for their extinction. But that has completely changed now, and the downtown's prospects have never been better. In fact, I walked investors from Corso to the Regal's UA Theater last night, and they were marveling at how nice it was in downtown Berkeley. It was pleasant, there was lots of street life, no homeless on the street, it was clean. They were remarking at what an amazing transformation they had noticed in downtown.
That's great. I'd be a lot more wealthier if I didn't eat at Corso on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That's one of the best restaurants in Berkeley.
It's cheaper than Chez Panisse. So.
Mona, we're so fortunate to have you on this panel. Your expertise speaks to this next question, which is, what is the current sentiment around getting projects entitled, and more importantly, financed and built? We're seeing so many entitled projects still not breaking ground, and really what needs to change to convert approvals into delivery?
I think that's a really good question that we're all kind of grappling with, and you heard from the mayor, you heard from Jordan. He was talking about the number of the units, the housing units that has been entitled and approved in the last few years. I believe we have another 1,500 in line from the housing units that have been entitled but have not been built, and another, he talked about 400, I think it was 63 last year that were approved. But you see there's a gap between what has been entitled and what has been approved. From the entitlement point of view, we are seeing that both the city of Berkeley as well as the state of California has made great progress in pushing some of these policies forward, from the density point of view, from the transit-oriented development policies, from streamlining the entitlement, and that's why a lot of these entitlements are moving forward. But we're in a completely different development cycle than we were 5 years ago. 5 years ago, if the projects were being entitled, they were most likely going to be built. Right now, obviously, things are more challenging with the current climate. The construction costs, you've heard it multiple times today, the construction cost is way up. It's 25% higher than what it used to be. The cost of funding, and the funding has become more selective. The capital's still there, but it's just being very selective about the type of projects that they are targeting and just moving towards, as well as the insurance costs. So all of that, add that together with some of the public projects that on top of all of these other complications, they have the affordability requirements, the labor requirements, and I'm not saying any of that is not
good, they're all good, but on top of each other, they accumulate, and get to the point that sometimes these projects become not feasible to be built. And I still believe, like, at the end of the day, the capital is there, the investment is interested in Berkeley, because Berkeley does have a lot of long-term strong fundamentals. It's just that much more complicated to navigate through all of this. And I think those are the moments that you need people, you know, the giants such as Patrick's and Allen's of the world, who know Berkeley really well, they know the market really well, and they can get really creative in the way that they get the projects built, and use strategies that are realistic, but able to make the project happen.
Great, thank you. Liz, maybe I can start with you on this question. How important is Berkeley's institutional background? UC Berkeley, innovation ecosystem, research activity. How important is it in shaping investor confidence?
Yeah, thanks. I think this was also alluded to on the earlier panel about, and also by our mayor, but it's a really different time in Berkeley's history where the partnership between our chancellor, our mayor, our city council, our own Office of Economic Development and Planning Department and others are really seeing the opportunities that the university is as an anchor for the economy, not just in terms of student housing, which is obviously really important, and those are also the shoppers and buyers of many retail and commercial storefront businesses, but also the research and development, software, hardware, AI and robotics, climate technology, etc. So the university's investment in things, what they call the I&E, innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, has really changed the way the university and the city partner in fueling the economy. And so we have this partnership, the Berkeley Startup Cluster, which I mentioned earlier, and we've been calling it like a 2.0 moment or a deeper Berkeley Startup Cluster over the last year, because our city manager, our team in the Office of Economic Development, the chancellor, the chief innovation entrepreneurship officer, the head of government and community relations all met and said, let's really double down on making Berkeley an incredible place for the startups, not only to launch and come up with their technologies, but also to build their teams, to invest in commercial real estate. And so there's been a number of ways that we've collaborated over the last year, but Baker Biolabs, which has at any given time 35 to 40 life science companies operating in it, meets with our office once a month. We talk about collaboration potential. We just attended the nation's largest life sciences trade show together, sharing a booth to talk about why Berkeley. In fact, I have some cards here that talk about why Berkeley. I put them out on the tables out there, but if any of you are out there selling Berkeley to customers or considering why Berkeley, please either talk to myself or Eleanor Hollander, the head of the Office of Economic Development. We'd be happy to give you collateral or talking points, either digitally or print materials. But I think this is a unique moment where the institutional backing for the local economy really goes to make Berkeley a brand that is strong around the world in terms of its academic prowess and also the innovation potential.
I'll just add to that too. Yesterday when I toured, there was no way I was, and this is for most of my capital markets, investors flying in from all over. I never missed the opportunity to drive all around campus, past the new AI campus is what I'm calling it, 380,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility for AI, compute, data science, to really point out that this is, I don't know, was it over half, 500 million, half a billion? I don't know what the actual cost was to build that, but
The
gateway, yeah. But tremendous amount, and I think a lot of it was private funded, and just to signal that and saying that, how do we compare to like Stanford, where academia and business are very much married together over there, and that Berkeley is just beginning that, and really showing downtown all the new restaurants that's come down there now, and just showing that there's more of a pull and draw for different tenant bases than just the students, and so I think that's really important. I mean, and the demand is there. I mean, I think this last year we had the highest amount of applications for UC Berkeley, like 126,000 applicants, and yet at the same time we accepted 11.4% of that. And so I think it's the first time that we're at 46,000 students here. We increase in-state enrollment, we increase international enrollment. So I think those are all positive things here when they're looking nationally, and that there is some negative enrollment growth in other schools and other states. And so I think that it's supply, demand, and I'd say just predictable supply, steady growth in terms of not just students but the population in the city. And then this capital investment in the city or by the university is what I think shapes a lot of the institutional sentiment that I try to help guide them to that spot.
That's great. Alan, I know you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think I've appreciated the conversation about Berkeley and the importance of UC Berkeley to Berkeley's growth, development, and its real estate development market. But I also want to just elevate the opposite, the importance that Berkeley is to UC. Berkeley, Oakland, is a big part of the story of why UC Berkeley has emerged as the leading academic institution on a global level. And I know that a lot of it was just activism and innovation coming out of this area. And that's been historic in my 7.2 decades. And I've seen a lot of it. And these different trends and different things. I know, I don't know how many people here, the word SFO helicopter means anything, probably little. I was one of the people that maybe a few hundred yards from where I'm sitting right now, came down, got on a helicopter, flew to San Francisco airport, and then my family got on the plane and flew out. We now are in this world where there's things like eVTOLs coming. This was a business model that had some, merit back then. It was a very uncomfortable ride. It was noisy. It was the vibrations. As a little kid, I was excited to get on the helicopter, but then I regretted it for having to get back on and reverse the trip back. But now, we've gone through this innovation. Berkeley can be a leader, I believe, in bringing back these cutting edge technologies. AI, I know one thing for sure, if anybody is mistaken, we're not gonna see, downtown San Francisco as it pertains to AV, autonomous vehicles in the East Bay soon. It's gonna happen. The next 10 years is gonna be almost unrecognizable, and there's gonna be a whole economy around that. The city of Berkeley is gonna have as much of a role in bringing about those innovations and that creativity. And finally, I'll say, this area was so rich in activism and innovation, from the arts to the sciences, as well as social activism. And I would say for me, equity and inclusion, this is probably a down cycle for that right now. And I think simple things that I live with is, despite Jim Crow and everything that happened, I had a family that had a house on Alcatraz where I was brought home from Kaiser Hospital. Nobody in my family, including myself, could afford to live in that house right now. And I know there was a point where Berkeley was leading the world in terms of creating equity and inclusion. Right now, the per capita equity and inclusion here, as well as quality of life, I'd argue, it's not keeping up. And a lot of it is due to all these holes in the homogeneous ecosystem of our economy. And we talk about all these programs and impacts and everything, but I think we have to expand our way of looking at it, and we have to turn to academia to help make that case as well.
Thank you, Alan. Let's move on to our next question. So, Mona, I know you are passionate about public-private partnerships, so this question can start with you. Maybe, Alan, you can wrap it in a bow, but how are public-private partnerships influencing the feasibility of major development in the city?
First of all, Alan well said. I hate to follow that, but everything we talked about, the challenges that we are facing with today's economy, just it makes it more clear that the public-private partnership is a crucial part of making projects feasible. You know what Berkeley needs? Berkeley needs mixed income housing, transit-oriented development, public open spaces, infrastructure. These are all very complex types of projects to be able to achieve with the current climate, and it's going to be more challenging for either public or private to do those independently. So that's where that collaboration can become really crucial in making the projects happen. Public can come in and bring in the land, bring in that policy kind of support, as well as the funding for infrastructure, the funding for affordable housing, that type of a long-term vision. And on the private side, the capital can come in, the knowledge and expertise in delivering projects and developing projects, managing the risk, and all of that can come in. And of course, as designers, we're also here translating. We're not just here to design buildings at this point. We have to translate what the public aspiration and the community aspirations are with the current realities of the financial and economic aspects of a project. But I would say that it's important for the public-private to come in together, but that's just not enough. The project would be successful if there is a shared vision right up front. There is true collaboration versus just you and them like separately. Like it needs to be a true collaboration, and also realistic expectations. You know, like the problems arise when all of these public benefits that are required, and they're all great, but they all pile on and layer on the project to the point that the project becomes completely not feasible. So it's not a matter of if it should happen, the public-private partnership. It's the question is how can we structure it in a way that can make the project happen and delivered.
Thank you. Alan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I think just to add to Mona's comments, I think the public-private partnerships are essential. I think from the business and development community, we have to really look more at being a little bit more broad in our perspective as it pertains to the public side of it and the public mission. I think that, you know, I got a call one time in Oakland when they were getting ready to put the jobs and housing impact fees on all of the office development. And we had to be, I guess the chamber was going crazy, this is not gonna work, nothing's gonna get built. But simply put, to sit in the chamber office and even have a few developers go downtown and tell the city council they shouldn't do it, they were gonna get shouted down by, 1,000 people in that same chamber who are going through housing duress. And, there has not been enough done to talk to those folks and even educate them on, what is responsible and effective advocacy. Because at the end of the day, that jobs and housing impact fee got passed. All those people were happy. They felt they had a victory, high fives, chest bumps. The elected officials were there taking pictures and celebrating. 12 years later, nothing got built. How much jobs and housing impact fee got collected? But me going down as a developer and trying to talk to the city council, I'm just gonna be looked at as somebody that's self-centered, big, bad, deep pocket developer. What we try to do is talk to our community and educate and inform them and spend a little bit more time, take a little more risk with transparency on the front end so that we can avoid years of long-term implications and impacts of bad, misinformed decisions that come in, people that actually get up and are ready to fight for something that they think is right, but they just are lacking the information. So I think we have to have a little bit more trust in our community to get it, what's in their best interest.
I'm going to ask you all to hold your applause. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I could just listen to Alan all day long. Let's switch gears into adaptive reuse. So what role does adaptive reuse or repositioning of older assets play in Berkeley's future pipeline? Mona, I know the West Berkeley conversion discussion we had on the prep call here. Maybe you want to kick off the
Sure, I
answers?
can kick it off, and I would love to hear your thoughts as well, because I know you are doing a lot of adaptive reuse, the theater that you just mentioned.